All right, guys, we're going to do a lesson on multiplying fractions. Make sure you have out a piece of paper, and you want to go ahead and title it Multiplying Fractions. And also make sure that you date your paper. Okay, when we're finished with this, this is going to go in your notes section. All right, so let's look at multiplying fractions. Let's first think about what multiplying means. If I'm multiplying 5 times 6, doesn't that just look like 5 groups of 6? Or it could look like this in picture form. So if we're talking about multiplying, we're talking about groups of. So 5 groups of 6. Okay, the same is true if we're talking about fractions. If I'm looking at this fraction, if 5 groups of 6, if 5 times 6 means 5 groups of 6, then doesn't 6 times a half mean 6 groups of a half? So if you look at this, isn't this 6 groups? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 groups, and they each represent a half. So let's figure out what my answer would be here. So let's see, I'm going to move that. Not really good. And this one. So 6 groups of a half would actually be 3. So I want you to be thinking about that. Why is it when we multiply, my answer became smaller? Kind of want you to think about that, okay? All right, so let's look. So in your notes right now, I want you to write this. You already wrote multiplying of fractions. So I want you to write this. So a box over a box, so that's going to represent my fraction. So a fraction times a fraction actually means this fraction of this fraction. So if I were talking about a half, so a half of 3/4. So that would mean I'm starting with a number that is less than 1. And I'm taking 3/4 of that less than 1. Okay, so pause the video if you need to and go ahead and write down those two symbols. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to show you both visually what it means to multiply fractions and then just computation, what it means. Some of you might do better with the visual model and then some of you just want the computation. So again, pause the video if you need to write this down and then come back to when you're finished. All right, so I'm going to show you first visually why when we multiply fractions, sometimes our answers get smaller and why that is. All right, so let's look at my first problem. 1/3 times 2/5. First of all, this represents my third. This represents my 2/5. I think you would agree with that. So if we're going to do with what we just talked about, remember that of means the same as times. So 1/3 of 2/5. So if I have 2/5 and I'm only taking a third of it. So this is a third and this is 2/5. Look what happens when I take a third of 2/5. How much is now shaded green? That would be 2 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 10, 15. That'd be 2/15. So 2/15 is not very much. Okay, so my answer became much smaller. Okay, because I'm taking a part of something less than 1. That's why my answer is becoming smaller. All right, let's look at this one. 1/3, and then this is 5/8. So I want a third of 5/8. So let's move this over again. So how many parts are now shaded in the orange? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Out of a total of, this was 5, 6, 7, 8, 8, 16, 24. Okay, so visually, that's why my answers are getting smaller, because I'm taking a part of a piece of a piece. Okay, so now mathematically, if you want to just think without drawing the pictures and shading in things, if you look at this, can you kind of see how I'm getting my answer here? All right, hopefully some of you are like, oh, I get it, I get it, I get it. All I'm doing to get this 2 is, if you notice, I'm multiplying straight across. 1 times 2 gave me 2, and 3 times 5 gave me 15. 1 times 5 gave me 5, and 3 times 8 gave me 24. All right, pretty easy. I know some of you are like, okay, the visual things I don't understand, but this I get. All right, so now in your notes, I want you to write all of this, okay? To multiply fractions is the product of the numerators. Remember, product means the answer to a multiplication problem over the product which is the answer to a multiplication problem, over the denominators. So if I have 3/4 times 8/9, I'm multiplying 3 times 4 and I get 24. I'm multiplying 4 times 9 and I get 36. But that needs to be simplified or to reduce. So I'm going to divide both sides, both the numerator and the denominator, by 12. And that gives me 2/3. Okay? All right, I want you to write every bit of this. So pause the video and then come back when you have finished writing. All right, so again, you don't need to write this part, but I just want to make sure that you understand when you're multiplying a fraction by fraction, your answer is going to be a smaller. It's because you are taking a piece of a piece, okay? So if you only start with half a cake and someone has half of it, okay, you don't have much left, okay? You didn't get much, all right? Okay, so let's do some together. We're just going to multiply straight across. So if I multiply straight across, 3 times 5, 15. 8 times 4 is 32. All right, you always want to look at your answer and think, is there anything I can do to simplify both of these? I can't think of a common factor, so that means that is simplified. So that's my answer. Okay, multiply straight across, I get 42 over 84. Okay. Let's see. I know they have, first of all, I know they're even, so I know I can divide by 2, but I want to see if I can think of something higher. I know that I can divide by, well, it looks like to me, actually, hopefully you see that this number is half of this number. So I can divide by 42, and I get 1/2. If you didn't see that, that's fine. There's the bell. If you didn't see that, that's fine, but just know that you would need to divide more than once. So let's say, for example, I see that I can divide by 7. So that gives me 6/12, and I can divide by 6, and that gives me 1/2. Okay? Doesn't matter how long it takes you to get to that one. Of course, if you find the greatest common factor, it's going to take you a short amount of time. All right, let's go to the next one. So that's 24 over 36, and I can divide by 12. So that gives me 2/3. Okay? All right, your turn. You try these. There's 3 problems. Pause the video and come back when you're finished. All right, so hopefully when you were simplifying those problems, your answer was simplified at the end. But sometimes if you look at a problem before you even start, you can do some simplifying, or it's actually called canceling. So if you look at my numerators and my denominators, sometimes you can simplify before you even start. Remember, simplifying is finding a common factor. So let's look at these 2 numbers first. I'm going to look at 15 and 20. So I have a couple kids here that are going to help me out. So if I look at my 15 and 20, can someone tell me what the greatest common factor is?
5.
All right, so they are yelling out 5. So I'm going to simplify both of these numbers by 5. So 15 divided by 5 would be 3. 20 divided by 5 would be 4. Okay, so that's my new number there. Let's look at my other numerator and denominator. I've got 14 and 28. All right, kiddos, what's my greatest common factor between 14 and 28?
7.
7? All right, 7 is a common factor. That is correct, but is there a larger one? What do you think, guys?
14.
Oh, I had a couple kids say 14. 7 would work, but 14 is actually the greatest factor. So 14 divided by 14 would be 1. 28 divided by 14 would be 2. So now I'm just going to multiply these numbers straight across. So 1 times 4 would be 4, and 3 times 2 would be 6. Uh-oh. If I look at that, I still see that these are even numbers. So that means I can still divide by 2, and I get 2/3. So if you look, oh my goodness, all of that number comes up to just 2/3. If I were to do that, multiply straight across, that would give me a very large number, and I would have had to have done a lot of simplifying. Okay, so this is just a way that might help you. Let's try another one. Let's see. All right, let's look at this number. All right, let's look at another one. All right, I'm going to look at my numerator and denominator, so I'm looking at 12 and 27. All right, kids, what's my factor? 12 and 27.
3.
All right, 3. So I'm going to divide by 3. divide by 3. Okay, let's look at my other numerator and denominator. Okay, I've got girls, kids, I've got 15 and 25.
5.
5, so I'm going to divide by 5, divide by 5. So now I'm going to multiply straight across. 4 times 5 is 20, and 3 times 9 is 27. Okay, so that is the answer simplified. All right, just a real quick one. If you see a problem like this, even if this simplifying is way too hard for you and you're like, you know what, I'm not going to do that. If you look at it this way, if ever you see a numerator and denominator that are the exact same number, you can easily simplify those right away. I can simplify that by 7, I get 1. Simplify by 7, I get 1, and that equals 5/8. Okay? So this is just a shortcut canceling. If that totally confused you, then you don't have to do any of it. But if you understand it and that makes sense to you, it is a shortcut, and please feel free to use it. All right, so if you want to try canceling, here's a couple you can try on your own. Pause the video and come back when you're finished. All right, check your answers. All right, last thing. All right, just really quick, if we're dealing with a whole number, hopefully you remember that 5 is the same thing as 5 over 1. So anytime you're dealing with a whole number, the first thing you need to do is just put it over 1, and then you can still multiply. So if I have 6 times 3/4, that's right away you should know that 6 is 6 over 1. Then you can simplify, or you can multiply straight across. So 6 times 3 is 18. 1 times 4 is 4. Now, because I am multiplying by a whole number, your answer is probably going to be improper, which means you need to then go and change it back to proper. So 4 goes into 18 4 times, and there's 2 left over, 2/4, which can simplify to 4 1/2. Okay? Now, if you are choosing to cancel, you could have canceled here as well. You could have canceled divided by 2. Divide by 2, and when you multiplied straight across, you would have gotten 9 over 2, which is the same as 4 1/2. It's just a different, I just got it a different way, okay? All right, same thing. All right, so again, put this over 1. Anytime you see a whole number, if we're dealing with fractions, multiplying, you're going to need to put it over 1 because it's the same thing. I'm just rewriting it a different way. Then multiply straight across. I get 40 over 7. That's improper, so I need to divide. That would go in 5 times. And I have a remainder of 5/7. Okay? All right, so here's a couple for you to do. Here's 5 problems for you to do on your own. This is what I'm going to check tomorrow to make sure that you watched all of the video. All right, have a great night.